Republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone, to the meeting this afternoon. And our first agenda item is a report from our governmental liaisons. And I see Senator Cooney in the audience. Welcome.
Good afternoon. So we're actually in person, right? This is been a while since we've all been here. Feels like a reunion. Mr. Glover and I have a report that's in front of you. The manner in which we've approached it this month is we've highlighted a few things in the recent issues section, and then provided a list of all the bills that are kind of relevant. There are three bills that we're working on behalf of the district: House Bill 123, House Bill 126, and House Bill 140, which are not noted on here, but we're working with Krista Boyle on those three bills to develop a letter in opposition. It deals with property taxes and language for levies, and so that more detail on that will be in the next report. We've had biweekly meetings with Ms. Boyle. Those have been taking place over Blue Jean, all virtually, and then we've had meetings with Representative Ingram regarding a number of bills that are taking place in the House, and meetings and discussions with Senator Blessing, who is Vice Chair of the Senate Primary and Secondary Education Committee. Thought that maybe some of you might be receiving calls about House Bill 334, which involves the potential for school board members getting more pay per meeting. House Bill 441, which says that you do not have to disclose the COVID vaccination status. These are all bills that are in the House. They have not passed. And then House Bill 322 and House Bill 327, they've received a lot of coverage in the media, particularly in central and northern Ohio, about critical race theory. And then Senator Blessing has introduced a bill, which will be heard tomorrow, Senate Bill 229, about the blending learning model between in-person and virtual learning. And then we're working on a meeting with the delegation. George has been in Columbus, has had meetings with a number of different legislators throughout the state, and he has some things that he would like to share.
Thank you, Eric.
Welcome, Mr. Glover.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Good.
Nice to see you in person. In particular, State Senator Bill Blessing, who's noted on your document there, is the Vice Chairman of the Senate Primary and Secondary Education Committee. He has been very receptive and very open to CPS and our concerns and needs on various pieces of legislation. He does, in fact, represent part of CPS and has been a key person in the Senate side going forward as a point person on Senate education-related legislation. In particular, he's been tasked by the President of the Ohio Senate, Matt Huffman, to be a contact person, the key person going forward on future renditions and reiterations of school funding. And while that issue was addressed in the current state budget bill, House Bill 110, nevertheless, there is an expectation that issue will be revisited again in the next state operating budget in about a year and a half. In that context, he has offered, and we have accepted, to meet with him in person if we can arrange the time and date for that to occur. I think you'll find that meeting with him to be very helpful. He is a student of education. He is a student of education funding, an engineer by training, been very receptive, very open to our discussions on this issue going forward. So we will work on that meeting with him, probably in person. I would hope some point in October as well. And we can certainly receive your communications and thoughts as to who should be appropriate to attend such a meeting. So that's in the pipeline right now. The other item that Eric mentioned, of course, is a meeting with the entire delegation. It may be a breakfast, it may be a reception, it could be a luncheon. Just when we try to do this every year or so, just to make sure everybody knows who the faces are, both on our side and the legislative side as well. So that is another project or event, if you will, that's in the pipeline. And we're certainly continuing to work with you and Krista as both those events are firmed up. Are there any questions at this point?
Any questions from the committee?
And then one other thing, if at any point, if the superintendent wants us to arrange meetings for her, we're more than happy to do that.
I have a question. How will critical race theory be defined at some point?
Okay, is that a metaphysical question? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you were to read House Bill 322 and House Bill 327, you would be just as confused. I mean, I think the vague argument is very strong in both of those. Not to comment on some legislation, but I think that's one critical thing that's missing in terms of this analysis. But these are things that are being discussed, and they're being discussed in the media, and so we have to take them seriously. And the House may decide to go forward with it, and if they were, then I think we have to, stay on top of that. But there isn't a definition that I've seen.
Just politics speak, pretty much. Yeah. Any other questions from board members or administration?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I may clarify, I refer to the state operating budget, which of course is now effective as of July 1 of this year for a 2-year cycle. Next year, you'll probably hear much discussion about the state capital budget, which will be enacted next year as well. They are rotating years, so this year is the state operating budget. Next year will be the state capital budget. Just a point of clarification.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. You're off the hook.
Thank you.
Okay, so then agenda item number 2, the update strategic plan strategy 2.1. And who is going to present that? Ms. Fuente.
So good afternoon. As you know, we have student-based health centers across the city. You have a memo on your table. It has a paper clip, and that will help you be able to distinguish it from the many other papers on your table. Some numbers that I think are very important to note. Medical referrals right now, we've had 9,032 since last spring. Vision referrals at our vision centers, 2,279, and dental referrals, 5,108. So those are representative from when we first came back full-time in person with all of our learners in the spring till August and the month of September. So right now we are working through those referrals to make sure that our students get the care and support that they need in our student-based health centers. You may remember that in the strategic plan, we talked about growing those student-based health centers. When we wrote that strategic plan goal, it was prior to a thing called the COVID pandemic. So right now we are on hold with growing those centers, but we are looking forward to having further conversations about that in the near future. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Yes, so you also have a memo on your table about some positive school culture updates, including suicide prevention programming. Grant Us Hope is one of those agencies or groups that helps to provide suicide prevention. As you may remember, this is in partnership with the city. Health and Safety Committee asked if we could provide resources and research around implementation in diverse learning settings. On this memo, there is a link that takes you to both the research and the curricular pieces. I'm happy to report they've done extensive revision on their curricula in order to make it more representative of the students for whom we serve. In talking with them several times over these last few weeks, we are willing to move forward with 2 schools, funding dependent upon that. We're also working with another group called Sources of Strength, and they provide similar services at no cost. They were funded through the Ohio Department of Education. And so by providing these 2 groups, we would be able to have support in many of our high schools. There are also several other updates on this document, but the first bullet addresses the agenda item for today.
Yes, Ms. Bowers.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Bonte. Is this able to be sent to us on the email? Okay.
Yes.
But the question I still have with, I know about 1 and 5, and I think that there are several schools, 5 schools in CPS that are currently using 1 and 5. Very
Correct.
inclusive, very diverse. But I'm still concerned about the diversity and statistics that go along with the effectiveness of Grant Us Hope or
Yes.
Hope Squad.
Yes.
And even though I know that they revamped the curriculum, I've still not seen any data. Even though I know there are 2 of our schools that are supposed to be using Grant Us Hope, Gamble, who didn't get it off the ground, and Aiken, but we don't have data from the effectiveness of using that curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be very concerned about that part.
They have provided us with some research from other school districts that when I send you this electronically, you'll be able to drill down and see. Yes, ma'am.
Any questions? Thank you. So, we on number 4 now. Did you give us the current up? Okay. Task Force Stakeholders, CPS's anti-racism policy. So who put that on the agenda? Is this supposed to be a review of this policy or?
I thought that was a conversation maybe you and Mike may have had.
No, not at all. I mean, it's Task Force Stakeholder. Yeah, I'm not sure. I thought perhaps administration put it on. Okay. So 5. Another one. Health, and this may go hand in hand with number 6 as well, COVID-19 pandemic.
So on your table, you have a stapled packet that is the health and safety update, as well as a memo that has events and updates concerning COVID. So to begin with the stapled packet, to just highlight a few things. At this moment, we have 13 classes that have moved to distance learning. We have 944 students who have tested positive since the beginning of August, 220 positive staff members, and as of today, 984 students who are quarantined. You can also see our staff attendance and our civil service attendance in this packet. On the shorter memo, in terms of events, we held over the weekend a vaccination clinic for staff who wish to participate in receiving first round shots. This week, in many of our high schools, we will be offering vaccination clinics. And on Saturday, we are having at Woodward High School, a vaccination clinic for all students and all staff, but really focused on our athletes. Any student who plans to attend will receive a $100 gift card as a result of a grant from the health department. So that is exciting news. And of course, our submission deadline for the vaccine mandate is October 1st. In other updates, we've talked previously about the surveillance testing that is occurring in our building. We are at 18 schools by the end of Friday. We add 2 schools next week, 6 schools the week after. So all schools will be participating in surveillance testing by Thanksgiving. This concludes the health update and COVID update. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Mr. Messer?
Thank you. Thank you for that. Do we have it broken out, any of the data related to positive cases for staff to know what percentage were vaccinated versus unvaccinated?
We do, but Dr. Amin cautioned us last week to really pay attention to, we were doing the math wrong. So we were looking at vaccinated, positive cases who were vaccinated and using the denominator as total staff. And she cautioned us to use vaccinated versus total number of vaccinated. So we have to recalculate that. We've been paying attention to it, but our formula, it was not, she cautioned us that it was giving us a look at the breakthrough cases that wasn't necessarily accurate. But we do have that data, and soon we will know exactly how many people in our district are vaccinated, so we will be able to calculate the number of breakthrough cases.
Go ahead. Okay.
And I think the other thing, I think it's good to have this this kind of rolling number, but I think definitely more interested in looking at this right-hand side. So it's looking at kind of rolling over time. And so just so that I'm seeing that correctly, so blue is the student, green is the staff, and that's as of this week, right? The 23rd is last week, right? Okay. It'll be fascinating to see what that turns out to be after October the 1st. So, okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I was looking at this side correctly.
Ms. Bowers?
Thank you, Chairperson. Ms. Assistant Superintendent Bunty, are you able to tell us right now if our numbers that are quarantined in our classrooms, are they more self-contained, or is this just across the board, different groups, or like regular ed versus the self-contained special ed classrooms, or more?
It really ranges. So it could be a football team, or it could be a self-contained specialized classroom or a preschool class. So it could be students who are involved in community quarantines because of something that happened with their family. So it really ranges.
So it just, it's different. There's no way to identify that contact is just at the school.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
I have a question. Now I'll get to the superintendent. With the vaccination clinics, are they accepting those who believe they're qualified for the boosters? As I read it, it's pretty much the honor system, people who believe that, they have extenuating health circumstances or over 5, will they also be included in these clinics?
Not the ones that are happening on Saturday or the ones that are happening this week. Those are all first shot opportunities. We've been in conversation with the health department, though, to have those booster clinics. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Superintendent.
Thank you. I just want to follow up with Ms. Bunty as far as, and I'm not sure if the board was aware, but for the last week, we've had technology issues. So email and uploading the vaccination cards. Can you give us an update? Do you think we need to extend because of that to give our staff ample time to upload their cards, and some of the communication was solved? So I just want to be fair to all of our staff members.
Yes, so right now we are going to see where we are at the end of tonight. We have not been able to get an accurate number of submissions. We did see the platform went down this morning. So we did see a very large increase on Friday night. So I know several of us spent the weekend trying to get through the ones that were in the system. But I do have concern in all transparency that due to the email system being down last week and due to the platform being down this morning, that we may have had some employees not be able to receive the email that said that their submission wasn't complete, or that they received communication that appears to be conflicting to them because the emails crossed when they may have gotten something that said they were approved, and then also simultaneously gotten something that said they weren't approved because the emails were held in a batch and then sent. So we are sorting through that tonight. We are hoping to have information tomorrow, but we wanted to be very upfront with folks to say that we are doing the very best we can to hit that deadline, but we also want to make sure that our employees, that we are treating them as respectfully as we possibly can in this situation.
And when is the deadline again?
Friday.
And I don't think this is going to be a problem, but to show some leadership and examples, I'm going to go ahead and register too. So I would think other board members would as well. I'm not sure if you thought of that, but we probably should be right with our staff. And I don't think it's an issue for any of our board members, so. Anyway, okay. Any other questions from board members or administration on this topic? We're just moving right along. Okay, we are on the SRO update, and it looks like it's a pretty good update here. There's many pages.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much. Joining me today, we have Attorney Dan Hoying, Ms. Connie Solano, and Mr. William Bell. I don't know if you've been introduced to him or not, our new safety director. So we have all been together the past several weeks working on this. Some of this these are pieces that you're already familiar with. I'll just go ahead and jump right in. Starting on page 2, next slide, please. Thank you, Rob. We started off reviewing with our goals the current MOU, looking at providing professional development and restorative practices. We talked previously about the redesign of the Promise Center, formerly A2S, A2E, the implementation of alternative learning centers in our schools, which actually had previously begun. And then we also did a collection of data highlighting our SRO program. Superintendent Amat, next slide, please, asked if we would include a timeline of when this work began. You are somewhat familiar with this timeline, starting in May of 2020 as our children were away from us, starting with the vision of Speak Up, Speak Out, understanding where our students were in terms of all the racial injustice that was going on, not only in the city of Cincinnati, but also across this country. And that timeline takes you all the way through a September, October reporting to this committee. Next slide, please. And the last meeting we had, I was asked to include all those members who participated on the next slide in our anti-racism policy creation. And those CPS staff members are listed there. We've had teachers participate, principals participate, central office administrators participate. Next slide. We've also had students participate across our school district, as well as parents participating. On the next slide, you'll see a list of several community members who were also interested in our work around anti-racism. Next slide, please. And so where we decided to start and move next is a deeper dive into our memorandum of understanding. And Dan Hoying took the lead on that portion of this work. Dan.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Yes, so I started with kind of a review of the Memorandum of Understanding. There's a copy that I've passed out for each of you so you can see what that looks like. That's something that the city took the lead on in drafting in 2019. And I think it's covers a lot of the bases. So one thing to note is that in researching kind of this MOU and the SRO program generally, this has been an evolving program for the district and Cincinnati Police, and has been reviewed frequently through the years. So it started with a program description and memo. At least my file starts with a program description and memo that was written in 1989. There was a significant review on the impact of the program in 92. There was another significant review when I guess they were called SRO and DARE officers in 2007. And so this is, I think, healthy for us to be regularly reviewing the SRO program. We also compared and tried to benchmark and make sure we were comparing our MOU and program to other cities and the best practices that have been published in other cities. Really good models, I think, in San Diego and Denver. So we looked at those. The U.S. Department of Justice publishes a sort of guidance for schools who want to develop an MOU, and they recommend having an MOU with the police department when you're introducing SROs into schools. And so this is a kind of 10-page best practices from the DOJ. And I have to say our MOU hits almost all the marks throughout. All of the recommendations kind of that the DOJ is recommending are really included in what we have as our MOU with the city. And I'll go through just a couple examples. So to start, it's recommended to have a really strong purpose statement and goals so that you're assuring that the parties are on the same page. That both the school district and the police department have the same kind of goals for the project. And we've got a purpose statement that talks about the key to this program is providing the safest learning environment for teachers and students. And so that's included already in the MOU. Next slide, please. There's also goals already set forth in the MOU to provide a safe learning environment for CPS students and educators, to provide resources to CPS educators regarding school safety. So SROs participate in helping to develop those safety plans that we've got for schools, foster positive relationships between the police department and students and educators. So again, that's already kind of included in our MOU. Next slide, please. The recommendation is to have really clearly defined roles and responsibilities for the parties. And here's an area where I think working with the police and the city, I think we could probably expand and clarify roles and responsibilities for the school and for the police department. So our team sort of has started to recommend what we might like to see as far as defining those roles and responsibilities. Obviously responding to requests for service, but also helping with those safety plans, developing emergency management and incident response plans, et cetera. Again, these are proposed, but something that we would recommend working with the city to expand our MOU. Next slide, please. There's roles for us too, trying to expand what CPS's role is to, again, ensure that we are solely responsible for school discipline. Next slide. A key provision that is recommended by the DOJ and basically every kind of best practice out there is absolutely, a prohibition, a clear prohibition of SROs becoming involved in what is school conduct. That's not the SRO's role to handle school discipline matters. And I have to say that's a part of our MOU. There is a very clear statement, and there always has been. From the very first MOU that we had with the city in 89, it has always been said that police officers are not responsible for school discipline and should not become involved in school discipline. Non-criminal violations of student conduct are the responsibility of school administrators. Next slide, please. It's also recommended that you actually go in and sort of define, who's responsible for different activities that come up during a school day. And again, here we've got a statement right in the MOU that says, incidents involving public order offenses committed by students, such as disorderly conduct, disturbance or disruption of schools, loitering, trespassing, profanity, dress code violations, and even fighting that does not involve a weapon or physical injury to a student, that's the responsibility of the school. That is not the responsibility of the police. CPD police officers shall only become involved in the above listed situations when necessary to protect the physical safety of students. So it's included. That the MOU, I think, is, again, there's some tweaks that could be made. I think one of the keys is, and one of the things our group talked about is, so it's written up well. We've got it in the MOU, but then making sure at every school level it's understood as well. And what we talked about is doing individual kind of agreements, summaries of these provisions that each principal would sign off on and each school resource officer. So the principal of, a high school would, sign a single page document with their school resource officer. And then again, everybody's on the same page in terms of what the responsibilities are. Last considerations for the memorandum of understanding is some information sharing and confidentiality. I think you'll hear there's probably some work to do for the parties in terms of data collection and making sure that we have accurate data. I think our experience over the last year, especially with some of the reporting that ACLU came out with, was that it was highly exaggerated and inaccurate. However, to be reflecting inwardly, I'm not sure we had the best data to be able to come back to say that's not accurate and let us show you why. And so working with the police to make sure that we've got, some consistent and reliable data that we're collecting, I think could also be a part of a revision to the MOU. So those are kind of our review and considerations of this MOU that we placed.
The next portion deals with data. Great talk, Dan. And Ms. Connie Solano, I believe, is up next. Next slide, Rob. Yeah.
Thank you for this opportunity. So you can go to the next slide, Mr. Wilson. Okay, so there's a couple of things here. I just want to give you some background information on the CRDC data. The Office of Civil Rights, or OCR, has the authority to ask for this information. And a little bit of background, a former superintendent had received a letter from the United States Department of Education basically saying that they were questioning accuracy in this data. It was based on the 2015-16 submission of CRDC data. And so as a result of that, so we're talking 2015-16, we got a letter in 2019 about the inaccuracy of 2015-16. We were told to make that correction and to submit it with the 2017-18 CRDC report. As a result of that, the team had to make sure that whatever was reported was accurate, because even though, as you can see, it took them 4 years, they do review it and we do get audited on that, okay? So as a result, we had to make sure that whatever data was in our student information system that we're reporting to both through EMIS for the state and to the federal government through CRDC was accurate. So I have a couple of links in here. I don't know if we're gonna go to them if we have enough time, but when you get a copy of it, you can see the link. One is the actual elements that are required to be reported. This is what we're showing now. This is the actual letter that was received. It was sent to Superintendent Mitchell, but it wasn't under Superintendent Mitchell's tenure because the data was in reference to the 2015-16 school year. She just received it. And it was a directive that we make sure that whatever we're reporting to those two entities, both EMIS for the state and also CRDC for the federal government, was accurate. Okay, so that was the directive. And as a result of that, everything that we submitted for the 2017-18, we made sure was accurate. So part of the submission, and if you want to click the next link, this is it right here. If you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that their authority is to collect all of this information, including students in K-12 who were referred to a law enforcement agent or official, and also students in K-12 who were arrested for school-related activity, okay? So it's not just arrest, it's also being referred to them. So of course, our main source is our student information system. And what we look is to make sure that those elements in the CRDC cells and in the EMIS cells were accurately being reported. And this was for the 2017-18 school year. So what we found upon auditing our own information system was that there was minimal data actually in those cells in regards to those two areas in particular, which were, again, students referred to law enforcement and students who were arrested as a result of school related activity. So what did we use? So the team went through the logs, because even though they weren't coded in the system, there's a log to capture everything that's happened in discipline, and read through those logs meticulously and looked for items that match what the law says has to be reported. Okay, either as a CRDC code issue or as any misissue. I mean, it was painstaking. It was a long process, but because it wasn't already coded, we had to make sure that that data was coded so that we can report it accurately, so that we don't get audited again to tell us that our data was inaccurate. So for those where we did not have the information in Power School, we got police logs, because again, the law says that they also need to know the number of students that were referred to law enforcement, and so that's what we got from our local police station. As a result, we also have to report on demographics for those kids, their race, their gender, EL status, IEP status. All that information is then fed to the government and then is reported as percentages in the CRDC, on the CRDC website. So again, that's how the data was collected. And I do want to say that we did look at the data that was reported by the students and then the data that we reported to CRDC, and we could not, for the life of us, figure out how they got those ratios, because we don't have anything near that. But for transparency's sake, that's why we reported the data that was reported the way we did report it. Any questions for me?
Yeah, so you're saying what was being reported by the ACLU, we still don't know where that data came from.
Because it doesn't match anything we reported, and we have meticulous notes on why we coded certain things the way we did in Power School, and it was based on two sources: the logs on discipline, and also what we received from the police department.
And how can board members access that data? Can you receive a report?
We probably have to redact a lot of the data because it's got student information on it. The police department, we'd have to redact that information as well because.
Well, we could review it in executive session because we are able to see that. We just can't disclose it. So this could be a discussion if we don't have to know the students' names, but if it's, something that is going to be a barrier to getting the data to us, we can do this as an executive session topic.
I think what we're trying to do here is kind of give the historic review of what has taken place over the last 7 years, and then what will our recommendation will be to remedy this. So not fix what happened 7 years ago, but to get better and move forward. But we wanted to get that historical perspective because those reports kept coming out to our board and at board meetings. But just having the federal government involved, our performance and accountability team worked meticulously to correct and report accurate information. But what we would like to do, so I'm just connecting the first two because we have a lot more to cover. What we wanted to do, so I'm clear on the purpose, what was the MOU? And a lot of things were in place. Two things that we wanted to clarify: roles and responsibilities and data. So this was just giving you some background before we go into our recommendation.
But I do believe it's important for the board members to receive the data because we're being accused of providing inadequate oversight, and we don't even know what the outcome is. We don't know whether we're in the wrong, whether there should be stronger oversight. So I believe that, with the support of other board members, we believe it's important to receive that data in some form.
Okay. We can pull an image report, a Power School report.
Thank you.
So before we close out, I did want to, next slide, Rob, please.
Oh, Mr. Messer had a question before we proceed.
I it's more of a general comment, so maybe I can wait till the end.
It might be helpful if we finish and then,
Okay,
whichever you prefer.
go right ahead then.
So speaking of moving forward, what this will look like, Mr. Bell has a portion to share.
Okay, next slide, please. Good evening, everyone. So we went through Power School just to get an idea of where the numbers came from. Our review revealed that during the 17-18 school year, out of the 30,000 disciplinary records reviewed, there was a total of 151 arrests. That was just with the police involved, where police had to be called in to stabilize a situation. Next slide. So the totals represent CPS and non-CPS schools. So from the police department. So what happens is the police department kept their records of youth, but you can be charged with something and then be one arrest. So my examples are if it's a status crime, or let's say a kid gets into a fight and one kid is fighting another kid and three of his friends jump in. And now it's 4 people fighting one. Well, the police department, if they're going to arrest somebody, they would arrest the kid that took the cell phone, which is one arrest, one charge of theft, and then they may charge that same kid with fighting his 3 friends. So it'd be one criminal charge, but one arrested but 4 criminal charges. It's my belief that that's where this information sort of crossed. So a criminal charge and a physical arrest are not one and the same. As I mentioned before, they can have multiple charges for one arrest. And findings revealed that or suggest that CPS was not aware of criminal charges through disciplinary records. So if it was something that led to an arrest and a person was suspended, then they know, but it's not always the case. It could be a situation where a kid or one of our students commits an act outside of school property, off school grounds, outside of school times, but he's also going to be listed as being a juvenile arrested. Next slide. So what we're going to do going forward is starting this next month, CPD will submit monthly arrest information involving students arrested on school property to CPS. That information will include their age, sex, their race, the location, and the criminal charges. And we'll keep the student's identity confidential. All right, anybody have any questions?
Well, how about we just wrap this up before we do
Okay, I'm sorry.
questions, if that's okay.
Oh, that's cool.
So then almost the last piece of this is the superintendent charged us with pulling together a task force. And so on the next slide, you will see the list of community members who worked with us and Cohere to hold this conversation. And what I would tell you and want to share with you, the other document you have, Understanding and Improving Police-Student Relations, you have already received this document in terms of hearing from the students, their parents, and the high school principals. What is added to this document at this point is a summary of what the community members wanted to share with you. And just very high level, they too had some concerns around our data, around our MOU, very consistent themes. But overall, the summary of this whole packet, we're looking for increased engagement with these school resource officers, transparency about their role, practicing empathy from all police officers, and being very specific about what is a school offense and what is a police-related offense. This document has feedback, ideas, experiences, and insight from all of those constituent groups. And then it has a recommendation of next steps in terms of continuing the dialogue, outlining everyone's responsibility for this work, getting to know SROs, training, and creating a new MOU. So we do, I believe, maybe on the next slide, I'm hoping. Yes, there is, next slide, please, a meeting with the high school principals and the SROs set for September 30th.
Now, would that be all of the principals and all the SROs, or the SRO with their principal?
All of the school resource officers have been invited and the high school principals have been invited.
So everyone's going to be together.
All together, yes, in this space.
Ms. Bowers.
Thank you for this extensive report and follow-up, because we have definitely been waiting on updates and feedback. With regards to the memorandum, and I thank you, General Counsel, for identifying with your team the areas that, when I read the MOU, that we really need to buff up and have a clear understanding on expectations and roles. What I want to make sure that's clear is that the idea that some of our school administrators in the past have allowed our SROs to act in a manner with discipline versus not, and we are aware of that. So I want to be clear that we have clear pathway with them about their responsibilities, as in number 3, understanding that protocol. Because a lot of times the SROs are not included unless they're solicited by a school administrator. And I think that needs to not be as murky. Also, when I look at the 151 total arrests and the data that we're getting, I'm glad that we are now breaking out CPS school versus just the schools that those SROs cover. But I am concerned that we're only meeting with our high school principals because of the concern of elementary school use of SROs as well. There have been SROs that do go to elementary schools and have handcuffed students and taken them away upon the request of administration. So I want to know when that is going to happen also.
We can work together to set that appropriate time. Absolutely.
And I would also recommend in the MOU, and I don't know if I've seen it, Dan, an annual training of principals and SROs so everyone understands roles, responsibilities, and procedures.
Mr. Messer.
Thank you. I think this is great, and I really appreciate the depth to which you explored this, both in the things that we could be doing better and the suggestion, or could have done better, and the things that now very specifically solution focused. How do we evolve this going forward? The data, obviously you guys are the experts in this, totally unrelated, but we look comprehensively at employees who have been terminated from our company. And yeah, we look at some of the surface things you can look at that person and tell, which I think is kind of the things that you have here. But we also have this 360 view. What else do we know about this associate? Have they received coaching consistently over time from their manager? What is their educational background? We're trying to identify what are the patterns in here that if we manage it well before that, maybe we won't get to that point of termination. And so I'm wondering, is that part of the plan that in the scorecard, the things that are saying here, but how do we assess for the other things that we might be able to draw some insights and learnings from to deploy things way earlier in the equation?
And that's the work of our positive school culture plan and restorative practices, which was on some of the goals. So what we covered pretty much now was around the MOU, but as far as support and what we can do to make sure we have a safe and engaging environment for all of our students, that's coming out of positive school culture, and it's not in conjunction with SROs. But what we are saying, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Murphy, that SROs participating in training, like restorative practice training?
Yes, absolutely. We have had that conversation. I did fail to mention when sharing with you the team members who have participated in this. Assistant Superintendent Bunty has been at the table for our sessions, as well as Director Bunger has been at the table for our sessions for carrying this forward, just in general, not specifically related to SROs, but they were very helpful in setting some direction.
So, so I think what you're saying is you look at the rest of that three-dimensional from that group and then take it back to see if the things are meeting. So could we, or whoever's on this board going forward, also see some of that kind of under the iceberg, under the water, some of those other factors to see then how that they should be communicating back and forth. For example, let's say that 151 arrests and people are like, wow. And we find out 75% of our students experience homelessness or something like that. It could say, you know what, if we triple our investment over here in helping giving stability, we might then be able to reduce that. And so just by having some of those other factors, it's just kind of a thought there.
And thank you for clarifying, because I missed that totally. With the new way where we're doing EMIS and including those demographics, we can get that report now to share that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Anything else? Now, I have a question, because when board member Bowers and I met with the SROs this summer, one issue that came up was that the SROs really didn't have someone in administration to go to when there were issues. And Mr. Bell is supposed to be that person now, right? Well, do they know that? Or is that going to be announced at this upcoming meeting?
They are aware, and I have been getting the calls. Yes.
Okay. And we can start that formally. He shouldn't have to introduce himself. We can do that formally, starting with the meeting this week.
Now, any other questions on this topic?
Ms. Murphy, are we presenting, I just want to make sure, so this is at this committee meeting, but we are on the agenda for Cal for it's a full board discussion?
We were, yes, for November 3rd, I believe is the meeting. Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Bell will be leading the conversation.
Would it be helpful to have the leader of the SROs there also? Who on the police side is heading up the SROs?
So it's being managed by Lieutenant Shantia Pearson.
By who?
Shantia Pearson is the SRO supervisor. She's the lieutenant there. She'll be here on Thursday, and if the board likes, we can invite her to be at the meeting.
I think it would be very helpful for the board to make that connection, if other board members would agree with that.
Okay. Mr. Bell, if you can please invite.
I'm sorry?
If you can please invite the SRO lead to the meeting on November 3rd.
To the board meeting on November? Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on this topic? If not, we have other business. If there are other topics that board members want to introduce or follow up on or assign. I think we covered a lot in not a whole lot of time. This is great. Yes, thank you very much. It was yeah. That's right.
Well, Miss Carolyn's back. She's going to keep us in check.
Oh, good. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and this meeting is adjourned.